Welcome to the 5th edition of Chemelot InSciTe's annual meeting. My name is Marcel Wubbels and I'm your host of today. And next to me is Ingrid Grimberg.
Nice to welcome you.
As you can imagine, with Corona it is impossible to have a live meeting and we all miss that. But nevertheless, we have a very exciting program for you where we will be discussing progress in InSciTe projects and also the reasons why we do those projects. We have several guests that will join us to give their perspective on things, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. The program is as wide as what does it take for a scientist to become an entrepreneur, ranging all the way up to how can we in InSciTe green up the European manufacturing industry to become more sustainable. So that is what we're going to talk about. But first, Ingrid. I see you all over the place in InSciTe. I see you at the website, at the news sites, in the Biobased plant, as a lab assistant, as an eye patient even. So how does that work?
Well, Marcel, at InSciTe we find it very important to inform a large audience about the developments that we are working on, because eventually they can have great impact on both man and society. And that's the reason that we use video a lot. Because that works really well, and I'm always there to support these shoots, and so I'm actually always the designated stand-in wherever I'm needed, so that's why.
Okay, so how is it like to work at InSciTe?
It's great to work at InSciTe. It's an open innovation platform and you get to learn about new developments almost every day. And in my job as a communications manager, but also in the education program, I get to work with a lot of highly motivated and very inspiring people, both in my team, but also in the community. So that's a great joy, really.
Okay.
And you, Marcel, you were involved at the very beginning, right, of InSciTe?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was in the early days of InSciTe, so actually before it became a legal entity, we needed some time to really have all the parties aligned. And I actually had the pleasure to be on the board and serving as a board chair for only 1 year. And then I left the company, DSM, and moved somewhere else, so I also lost track a little bit of InSciTe. So that's why I'm very happy to be your host today. And I've seen a lot of good progress ever since then. So I'm really excited about what we're going to offer you. Enough about me. What is your role in the program today? We have a special role for you.
Yes, well, next to your role as being our talk show host today, I will be your social co-host, which means that I will invite you to actively participate in this event and invite you to ask questions and to vote in our polls, which will Marcel further explain.
Yeah, so how does it work? We want to have an active and live interaction with you as an audience. So there are two ways of interacting. The first one is you can ask questions anytime during the show using the chat box. So if you put questions there, Ingrid will pick them up and we will address them during the show. On top of that, we also have some questionnaires where we would really like to probe your opinion on certain things, and that we do via Mentimeter. So if you go to menti.com on your computer or even on your iPhone, it doesn't really matter what you use, and type in the 6-digit code that you now see on your screen, you will be given access to our questions. With that, I'd like to invite you, Ingrid, to go to the social room, and yes. I will see you in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy the
so
show.
Just to repeat, if you have any questions during the program, put them in the chat box and we will pick them up from there. And on top of that, for the questionnaire, go to menti.com, type in the 6-digit code, and you will see the questions that we have prepared for you. Welcome to the show.
Well, welcome to the show. All of our viewers have chosen to join a specific live stream today, either a biomedical live stream or the Biobased live stream. And what is actually the difference between those two? Well, you will be watching different documentaries today, but as soon as we get back to the talk show sessions, you will be watching the same talk show. So it's parallel and sometimes it's a joint talk show session. Before we start with more information about InSciTe and the projects, we would also like to get to know our audience a little bit better. So the first questions we would like to address to you, and that's also a good way to test the Mentimeter. We have some questions about how many viewers are actually watching now, the biomedical live stream or the Biobased live stream. You can go to mentimeter.com and submit your answer. What are you watching, the biomedical live stream or the biobased live stream? So either A, biomedical, or B, biobased. I'm curious to see the answers there. So let's see if we already have some results. Oh, it's a little bit 50-50, a little bit more biomedical viewers and, 42% biobased sessions. Oh, it's adding up, it's adding up. Okay. What might be good to notice also is that if you would like to view the other live stream too after this event, that's possible. We will send you more information about that so you can watch the extra live stream too later this week. Second question is, what type of organization do you represent? Is that A, you're a member of the Chemelot InSciTe team? B, you are working in the industry? C, you are working at a university? Or D, you represent a different organization? So we're wondering where you work, actually. So is that A, Chemelot InSciTe, B, industry, C, university, or D, other? Let's see if we already also have some results about that. And yeah, the majority is working at university. But we also see almost 20% of industry members here, which is also really nice to see, and some other type of organizations. Thank you very much. Last question in this first Menti test. Yes, we're sorry we couldn't be able to organize the live event this year because of these specific circumstances. And we're wondering, what do you think about the live event not going ahead? You could choose answer A. It's awful that the live meeting is not going to take place, and I mean especially the part where we have the drinks. B, I really like the fact that the event is digital, so now I can watch it in my pajamas. Or C, I also think the live event is a lot of fun. However, I've never been invited. So, I'm wondering, I could take a wild guess. I think answer A will be winning here. And yes, I'm correct. It's awful that the live meeting is not going to take place. And I mean, in particular, the drinks. We'll be giving back the word to Marcel to find out some more about the talk show and our guests. Back to you, Marcel.
Thank you, Ingrid. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate all of you for passing the Menti exam. That worked really well. But these are, of course, the simple questions. There will be some more challenging questions later on. So let's continue the program. Our guests of today are Ludo Diels, the Flemish Institute. He's representing the Flemish Institute of Technology Development. And he's also chair of the advisory committee of SPIRE. Welcome, Ludo. Patricia Dankers, Professor of Biomedical Materials at Eindhoven University of Technology. Welcome, Patricia. Koen Jansen, Vice President Innovation at DSM Biomedical. And also for sustainability at DSM. Rhiannon Grant, postdoc at the Merlin Institute of Technology, Inspired Regenerative Medicine. I'm very glad that there's also an abbreviation for that. Welcome, Rhiannon. Then Yvonne van der Meer. She is the scientific co-director at the Aachen Maastricht Institute of Biobased Chemicals and Materials. Welcome, Yvonne. Bernard Mulder, General Director at RegMed XB. Welcome, Bernard. Danny van Osch, Chief Business Officer at Vertero. Welcome, Danny. And Emil Staring, Managing Director of Chemelot InSciTe. Some of the things that we will discuss. Should property rights lie with the entrepreneur? And should the university invest more in entrepreneurship? That and more is going to be what we talk about with Emil, Danny, Bernard and Yvonne. But first, back to Ingrid.
One of the ways to help tackle the plastic waste problem could be upcycling, recycling plastic waste streams into applications of a higher value. Expertise is now brought together in a new and innovative approach. As we all feel the urgency, there is no planet B.
We can no longer heavily depend on fossil fuels if we move forward from now. We have a problem with our CO2 emissions, we have a problem with our climate, plastic waste ending up in the ocean. So I feel like, especially within industry, we really need to do something, and we really need to make a step.
Man produces 350 million tons polymer per year, and only 9% of that is recycled. 9%. And the reuse is then in most instances in lower end applications. 4 million tons end up each year in the oceans. Yeah, and that is of course disastrous. Well, I've seen with my own eyes in Asia and in the Caribbean what a disastrous effect that has on the animals.
Unfortunately, still most of it ends up in landfilling or waste applications or in incineration, so really burning the plastics for energy recovery. But at the same time, we also generate a lot of CO2, which of course is, in the end, especially for our climate, not what we want.
And for me also key in that is that if the value of the product at the end of its life is high, then people will not dispose it. I think that the focus should be in upcycling, and the Biceps project is typically an example where we fully aim at upcycling the material.
We can really make materials that make a huge step in terms of properties. So we can advance the properties from a single PET bottle into a high-end application product. We can make variety of properties of materials. We can vary the stiffness, we can vary the hardness, we can vary the looks and the aesthetics of the materials. That opens also opportunities for different application areas for these materials. Well, I think with the multi-purpose pilot plants we have available on site, we can already test and see what's the best materials to design and how to design the process best to make the next steps.
We should aim at recycle to prime properties.
We feel the urge to really do something new with them and make them, give them more value, to basically upcycle them in towards different or new applications.
In this installation, we can upcycle waste from bottles or carpet, TPEs, to thermoplastic polyester elastomers, for example to make flexible cables, new carpets with a better feeling, or coatings with improved barrier properties. Polyesters and polyamides can be readily depolymerized and purified. Adjusting monomer mix compositions and repolymerizing gives the desired TPEs. There is a great variety of post-consumer and bio-based monomers to select from, and even more TPEs to produce. In the first reactor, the circular feedstock is dissolved and depolymerized. In the second reactor, the composition is tuned and polymerization is simultaneously started. The polymerization is finalized. Finally, the new polymer is extruded, cooled, and chopped into pellets. With the new 30 kilogram polymer samples produced in the pilot plant, compounds, components, and user goods can be produced for performance checks. This offers ample opportunities to improve circular materials business.
This is a unique process that can only be applied for polyesters and polyamides. And that relates to the circularity, as you will find in nature. Nature builds up molecules to high molecular weight, and when they have ended their function in nature, nature can degrade it back to the original monomers. And then the other parts of the nature will take those monomers again and build up the polymers.
By having access to this pilot plant, the whole process is speed up tremendously. And it's really cool that we can immediately, after we find something out, test whether it also makes sense on a larger scale. And that's where the multi-purpose pilot plant is really fundamental.
Here we have a pilot plant that is available for all of the companies in Holland or in Europe that have similar ambitions. So they should form an open innovation platform for this whole polycondensation world. There is a reason that plastics are there. They are cheap, they are very light, they are very versatile. So we cannot live as a society without plastics, but it needs to be circular.
Recycled PET is much more expensive at the moment compared to virgin PET. The driving force towards those materials, and to pay more for those type of materials, we still need some mindset change there.
We need to think in a new way.
And on the one hand, in the industry, we'd like to fade away a little bit from using fossil fuels. But I think if we would like to make our economy a little bit more circular and strive also for sustainable solutions, we need to do something about this. And if we would be able to tackle all these challenges, I wouldn't say problems, but the challenges, I think then we really have a technology at hand that can really make the transition. We're really making the first steps, but it's not so simple. So thereby combining knowledge on the academic level as well as industrialization approaches in one project, I think that is a great opportunity for the future.
Yeah, we have very talented young people in the team, and that energizes me always very much. Those people are very eager. My generation had the luxury to be on the planet in its best time. Then the time period that my children and grandchildren will envisage will not be that nice. We need to change.
We definitely have to act now, yes.
The next topic that we're going to discuss is entrepreneurship. We will discuss that with Yvonne van der Meer, Scientific Co-Director of IMEBM, Bernard Mulder, General Director of RegMed XB, Danny van Osch, Chief Business Officer at Vortoro, and Emiel Staring, Manager Director of Chemelot InSciTe. So Emiel, I want to kick it off with you. You worked at DSM for quite some time, and in recent years mainly in public-private partnerships. And you have also been involved in Chemelot InSciTe since its establishment, and I remember those days very vividly. 2020 is a special year for your organization, an anniversary year, but no lifetime event this year. So what do you think of that?
Yes, the live event that we have, a two-day get-together, was becoming more or less a tradition, so that we cannot do that nowadays because of COVID, when we have the fifth meeting planned. For some it was quite a disappointment when we decided early this year to not have this event, but look for an alternative. But I think that the alternative that we have found is also very inspiring, and the more concrete it became, I must say, all the people that I've worked with became more and more enthusiastic. Also the ones in the project that have done a lot of work to make these mini documentaries. So I think all in all it proves to be a very good alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I must admit I've only been participating in one of those events, and I still remember the party very well.
Yes.
More than the content.
That's what many people remember.
But for the viewer that doesn't know InSciTe very well, and also has maybe some question marks on what does a director do, so what exactly do you do in InSciTe?
Yeah, let me first try to explain what InSciTe is all about. In InSciTe, we start our projects with what we call a more or less proven scientific and technology concept that we try to develop with consortia, with a number of partners, into a concrete application, a tangible prototype quite often. And but we do that always in consortia because, for instance, for universities it might be too costly or too big or too complicated to take up the next step in development of such a concept. For a company it might be too risky to take that up in an early phase. But joining forces, and they can be successful. That is what we do mostly, bringing parties together in consortia and try to achieve such a very concrete and tangible goal. And by combining knowledge, experience, and also our important infrastructure, we have an attractive proposition to really speed up your technology development, and we are quite successful in that.
And a lot has happened this year in particular. You moved to a new location in Maastricht, and you've also transferred a lot of activities to Medis, a new company and a spin-off from InSciTe. So why did you make those choices?
Yeah, as I said, the working model that we have developed, that is all about accelerating your research, and we started accelerating your development. We started to do that with our consortia, but pretty soon after, individual companies knocked at our door and said, can't you help us with our development, using combined knowledge and expertise, and also using the infrastructure that we have at InSciTe. And when these companies knocked at our door, we came up with the idea to provide this co-development as a service for a fee. And then Medace, the concept of Medace evolved, and then Medace was established as an independent company that helps you to accelerate your research. Accelerator Matrix, they call themselves. Well, they decided to establish themselves as a new company. They needed a new facility, which is about 4 times as big as the one that we have developed earlier on. So we simply decided to join them in this joint effort.
Okay. Hey, that's very exciting. And if you look back at those last 5 years, what are the things that you remember most?
Oh yeah, that can be a long list, but time is short. I have been informed before.
I'll make sure of that.
But I think we started out on an ambitious goal, and you were there, so you do remember. And I think that what we have now achieved, that we see all these projects that have now gained momentum and really start to deliver upon the promises that we have made in those days. That is indeed quite an achievement, I say. We can celebrate that jointly. And to be very concrete, I think that about 9 startups now have evolved from Medace. One biomedical concept is being tried really in patients, to treat patients in clinical trials. 2 more of these are on the brink of going into clinical trials. And also...
I hope you're not going to describe all 9 of them, maybe.
No, I will be...
Really
and in the biobased field, of course, we now have the first customer order for one of our biobased intermediates. So I think that all in all, quite an achievement.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And I think in those early days, we had some concerns about, let's say, commercial use. It's very nice to see that we have some fine examples of entrepreneurship, and that's what we will see next.
Becoming an entrepreneur is not a choice that you make overnight. The freedom that you will experience will go hand in hand with sleepless nights and worries about financial issues, personnel, market developments, and so on. You are now about to watch 2 young entrepreneurs with an academic background, willing to take this leap. Let's see what motivates Michael Boot and Alex Roth.
In order to make this product a success, we need good science. But in order to actually get it to the patient, that's where entrepreneurship comes in.
I was the project leader of an InSciTe project to commercialize and develop a new pathway from biomass to a crude oil, and from crude oil to different chemicals and materials. And in 2017 we made the decision as a consortium to spin off the project results into a new company, Fertoro. So what we do is a very simple trick. We turn solid biomass into liquid biomass, and then this can go into existing oil refineries and petrochemical plants, and we want to play a major role and help accelerate the green carbon uptake throughout the value chain.
SciCap is an acronym for a synthetic cartilage plug to treat focal cartilage defects of the knee. 20,000 patients undergo total knee replacement surgery every year. With the SciCap implant, we hope to be able to postpone that first knee replacement surgery, or even make that first knee replacement surgery unnecessary. Currently, we are raising funds to start a venture so that we can actually also start to transfer the manufacturing process to a medical grade facility. To be able to get that product to the patient, the best chance of that happening is through a venture and with me as an entrepreneur. But contracts and deals are really not my thing. So I'm very grateful that we found someone who can aid us in that field.
I started my first company in 2009, and I haven't known how to pay my mortgage in 6 months from now since then. The plus is that you can do exactly what you want to do. So the company is something molded in your image of how you see the world, what you would like to achieve. So InSciTe is the, let's say, the organization that brings all these different partners together, which also manages the finances and the projects. The first thing that really impressed me was that it's extremely professional and well managed, which means that we can focus on the technology and bringing it to market, and the periphery of, let's say, managing the projects and bringing the projects into the publicity is something that's also being taken care of by InSciTe.
We are very happy to actually get the support from InSciTe's quality program to make sure that the project documentation is up to the standards required for a first-in-human clinical trial. InSciTe's education program has also helped us along greatly. And for example, programs on intellectual property and also in, entrepreneurship. It's something that's not taught at university.
Normally, especially in academic spin-offs, universities have their vision on how projects should be valorized and who should get which part of the pie, and entrepreneurs have a usually inverted vision. And I think what made it easier this time around was that InSciTe has its own set of IP guidelines, which are very strict, very detailed. And in this case, it was relatively simple. But if the rules are vague, then it can be really complex.
Investment is, of course, very important, because without investment, we will never reach that first patient. So we participated in the Venture Challenge program. During that 12-week program, we prepared a first version of a business plan. During that program, we actually pitched to investors as well. That really got us excited about starting a venture.
What you see in a lot of startups is that they bootstrap. And bootstrapping means that you try to avoid getting external capital in for as long as possible. I decided with Futuro to do it more professionally from day one for both my private situation, but also I know from experience that bootstrapping causes a long delay. So the whole bio-based is a rat race. So everybody says it's going to be this, it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. And the first person that's able to scale will probably win, and that will be the platform. From day one, and even up to this point, Futuro never owned anything. So from day one, we've utilized lab facilities in Eindhoven at the university and piloting facilities here at Brightlands. And that just gives you so much more speed. Even if we could raise 15 million now to build our own demo plant, we would lose 3 years. The state-of-the-art facilities at the pilot plant here you can view as hardware. So all Futuro does is we come in with software or a recipe, the hardware there can run it, and then there's something coming out of the printer. But Futuro itself is not allowed to operate the pilot plant. There's, for safety and regulation reasons, there's certified personnel that is trained to do all these experiments.
Within the InSciTe facilities, unique equipment is available to us. One example is the joint simulator. Where of the implant is a potential risk, and the joint simulator will help us in mitigating that risk. Getting to know that quality management system has also made us aware of the regulations that apply to medical devices. During the development process, we are basically mitigating every possible risk that we encounter or that we think of. The role of the participants' representative, which for our project has been Jens Thies, has also been very important. It definitely makes us more confident that we are going down the right path, and that within the past 5 years we have checked all the boxes required.
The sense in the team is that, we're really going places, and it makes everybody just get a lot of positive energy. Well, in 5 years from now, we'll have multiple commercial scale plants up and running, probably one of our own. I think we'll have to build the first one ourselves, and thereafter we have a licensing model. So we would license the technology to other parts of the world where there's a lot of biomass and a need for green fuels, chemicals, and materials.
It's a very exciting process. In 5 years, we hope to have the SciCap implant in clinical trials and on our way to CE mark so that we can gain entry to the European market. With that goal on the horizon, that is what keeps me motivated every day.
Back to the table. Danny, you're known to be quite ambitious. Hearsay. Next to your postdoc, you also worked for the startup of Vertero, which we just saw in the video. How do you feel about your project developing into a spin-out?
Yeah, I think that's really ideal for, at least for me as a researcher, because it's not only about the research and it's not only about publishing the results, but it's also about producing your research in such a way that within 5 or 10 years you can see it at a commercial scale. And for me, that's really something that drives me every day.
Yeah, very nice. We'll talk more in a minute. First, let's get an impression on how the audience sees a couple of things.
Well, let's find out what you think about entrepreneurship and spice up this discussion a little. We have some statements for you again, and we're wondering if you agree or disagree. If your idea is good enough, you don't need an organization like InSciTe to market your idea. Do you agree? Or do you not agree? We're wondering for that. If your idea is good enough, you don't need an InSciTe to market it. Well, let's see if we can already get some results of that. All right, not true. Good to hear. Okay. Next question. All property rights belong to the entrepreneur. Do you agree or do you disagree? All property rights belong to the entrepreneur. Let's see what you think about this. And maybe we already have some first results to see. Not true. Okay, very obvious. Okay, last question in this poll. Entrepreneurship courses should be organized at the university. Do you agree or do you disagree? You think that entrepreneurship courses should be organized at the university, or do you think that entrepreneurship courses, like for instance IP related courses, should be taught somewhere else? So, do you agree or do you disagree? Let's see if we already have a result on that too. True. Okay. Well, good to know that also. So there is need to organize this by the university. Well, remarkable statements. Food for thought, I think, Marcel. Seems to be some discussion possible. So back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ingrid. I think it's great news that an organization like InSciTe is actually seen as help to commercialize things, and also that entrepreneurs don't walk away with the IPR rights. I think that's also important for the sustainability and the economic sustainability of a company. And I think that's an important statement as well, is that entrepreneurship also should be something that universities take a stake in, and also organize some of the teaching around that. So to talk about entrepreneurship and go a little bit further, I would like to ask a few questions to you, Bernard, if I may. Bernard, you've been involved in various enterprises, including startups. And as a director of RegMedXB, you try to build a bridge between researchers and entrepreneurs to work together on, for instance, regenerative medicine solutions. Are you surprised by the results of the questionnaire that you just saw?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. I think that the audience is well aware that entrepreneurship has a a place somewhere, but where? And for scientists, as far as I know them, they're very much interested in science in the first place. So where does entrepreneurship come in? And I'm very happy that the third question actually showed that the ones that are in this audience, which is of course the audience of Inside Chemelot, may be a little bit tweaked towards those entrepreneurs, but at least they say it should have a role in the education, and I do agree with that. The thing is that the moment you understand a little bit of entrepreneurship, you sometimes understand also better what is needed to get a product to the market later on. A stereotype example is the rat study that you plan to do. Is that rat study solid enough to pass through regulatory hurdles later on? Or should you have used a mouse study? Those kind of simple questions could already influence the outcome of your business at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's better to have that at the onset of what you do than halfway, and you basically have spent a lot of money and time on things that maybe are not really adding to the value.
So that's very little example, very small example. But it is already driving the resources in the right way to get to the market in the first place. So, and then the spirit of entrepreneurship, which is, I think, also something that is, you have to encounter sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, that things can go wrong. And terribly wrong. You can even, have a failed company at the end of the day, as I experienced twice.
Yeah.
So then your mortgage you cannot pay, which is indeed let's say, a challenge then to survive with your family. But luckily the third one did survive. So that brought in some cash to pay the mortgage. But that risk, that level, that risk appetite should be in your science. As a scientist, in a way, you also take risk in science. But you also should understand that later on, when you're a real entrepreneur, like Danny is, sometimes some things are at stake.
Yeah. So when I studied chemistry, the more commercial side was a little bit the dark side. You would typically not move there. And I think what we do see is that there is quite a bit of entrepreneurship, and the way we now also integrated with the university programs is a big step forward. So you mentioned Danny being a real entrepreneur, as you say it, taking risks and really going there. How do you perceive this, Danny? I mean, you are obviously a somewhat younger generation than we are. So how do you see the role of society and insight together?
I think in the end, it's always about taking risk, and I think the biggest advantage that we have now is that by working with an institute as Chemelot InSciTe, you actually reduce your risks. You have a lot of knowledge there. You have a lot of people that are willing to help you. And what we see also, for example, what Michael said, in the lead times that you normally have, for example, to go to a pilot plant, so fully running pilot plant, normally takes you years. While in our case, it took only like 1 year or even less to go to that stage. And I think that helps you by growing your company and also then taking less risk, of course.
Yeah, and learning from previous experiences. I think there's a lot of, let's say, we don't have to reinvent wheels.
Exactly.
There's a lot of wheels that are already invented. So talking about ownership, Emile, what actually happens to a project when it does not become a startup? Is the idea being sold, and what about IPR, intellectual property rights?
Yeah, I think that the projects that we select, we hope and expect them to end up into a commercial application. So that would automatically mean that all IPR that is associated with that should at least be accessible to the company or the entity that is going to commercialize. And we simply negotiate on rights for access. And if at the end of a project, no company steps up at that moment in time to bring that further, but just simply keep it in our portfolio. And we've seen examples, early examples of projects that were technically successful within InSciTe, but apparently time was not right. And it is now being revived, and we see companies being interested in the IP that we have generated. So we keep it for a certain moment of time. Of course, it may run old and overdue, but we keep it for a certain moment in time to try and find interested parties for licensing or transfer.
Yeah, there is this concept that business ideas are sometimes also circular. Huh? It also depends on what is your exact timing to bring it to the next level.
Yes.
So Yvonne, at Maastricht University, what can you mention some examples of entrepreneurship being taught there as well?
Yeah, I was positively surprised to see that people also see the university as a place for entrepreneurship education. Within our Master Biobased Materials, we have an entrepreneurship course, also to inspire students who have good ideas to think how could that become a business. But I must also admit it's not only taught by academics, so we also invited people from the Brightlands Chemelot campus ecosystem who have experience in setting up a business to tell our students how this works. Because myself, I'm not an entrepreneur, so I can tell them a lot of sensible things, but maybe I'm not the right person to tell them how to set up your own business.
Yeah, and is it then, if you invite people from industry to tell those stories, do they tell you the successes or also the pitfalls? Because I think in learning, fail is first attempt in learning, right? So if you really want to learn fast, it is also good to look at things that didn't go well.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, but it's also integrated in our program where students do research-based learning. Also there, they have great plans, and of course, 80% of them fails, but we celebrate the 20% that is working. And I think it's a little bit the same with entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Now, also, I think if you look at development and pipelines of new developments, also in companies, it is also good to celebrate the thing that did not work and to maybe formally bury it and to start up something new. And I think there's a lot of learning in those types of things, especially for entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So I'm really delighted with the conversation, but I'm also delighted to hear what our audience has in any of these, if they have an opinion on any of these questions. So dear Ingrid, so what is cooking at the audience?
Yes, well, Emil, how does InSciTe provide extra support for starting entrepreneurs? Is there also some consultation or advice? How do you organize this?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. As I explained earlier, I think that the objective of the InSciTe project is to end up with a commercially attractive concept that can be transferred to a startup or to an existing company. And we try to, apart from the technical development that we have, in parallel to the technology development, we also support the project in drafting a business plan to investigate the market opportunity. And the example that we just earlier saw of Alex on the SciCap project, we even helped him to participate in a national competition, which is meant for, let's say, teams that are on the verge of starting up a company, and then have them go through a process of several weeks to continue to improve their market idea, but also how to translate that into a real business plan. So there are many ways in which we help scientific entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial scientists and their teams to start a business.
Okay, thank you. A different question for Danny. What do you find most challenging yourself?
I think what is most challenging that, of course, we're also still scientists, so we also still have to publish. And I notice from, let's say, the entrepreneurial part is mostly the most exciting part. And sometimes then I miss writing my publication. So that's still something I sometimes have to do a little bit more.
Okay. Well, those were the questions regarding entrepreneurship. Back to you, Marcel.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to continue. So what does sustainability and medical applications have to do with one another? We'll talk about that in a minute. But Ingrid, can you tell me a little bit more about the next documentary?
Will it eventually become possible for industry to use lignin obtained from biomass on a large scale to produce sustainable materials and chemicals? This is what is being explored in the research project Doing More with Lignin. This is now being explored by Ben Royakkers and Pablo Uton and 4 other partners within the European co-funded research project Doing More with Lignin.
We must act now to reduce the carbon footprint of the chemical sector. What if we choose lignin, obtained from biomass, as an alternative for fossil feedstock? It's widely available and is a highly promising feedstock in a wide range of applications. Nowadays, a lot of biomass residue is burned. Why? Because it's considered to be worthless, and up until now, it could not be used in traditional industrial processes. But what if we could make the worthless valuable? For instance, by creating new value chains, from roadside grass to window frames. Value creation opportunities like these are now being developed in the project Doing More with Lignin, which is supported by regional initiatives and the EU.
BioTreat Center is a half-open innovation center where entrepreneurs can make contact with us can see if that we can help them in their process for a new business. Some years ago, Marijn Rijkers from Chemelot InSciTe had made some figures about what you can do with lignin. In that time, Vertoro was also starting to produce crude lignin oil from the lignin. And for me, was the most important that Vertoro can say, okay, our business opportunity is so good that it is important that there is on the input side there is business. And then I've had some contacts with Attero, and Attero was very proud to do with us while it was connecting with their own project to make mono digesting from roadside grasses. So it was connecting together. We have started the field lab for cleaning the biomass. That's what we do als BTC met Attero together. Then you have Vertoro for processing the lignin to good lignin oil. And the next steps with Enromas and Vito, they do something else with the products therefrom.
What we are proposing is to introduce bio-based polyurethanes into frames and profiles for windows and doors, but we have also insulating foam that we want to increase also the bio-based content in order to reduce the carbon footprint. The benefits of lignin using in window frames is that we can provide a product that is with the same color of wood, with the same properties of wood, because we are using non-hollow frames, so it's more or less like wood structure, but with the durability of a high-performance material.
What is important for the lignin value chain is that the roadside grasses and the compost first clean. Just take out stones and garbage and so things. The second step is to get out the sand and the salts. The water we will also processing that it can be used again, and the minerals we can use as fertilizer. You will not produce again residues. You will use everything. Otherwise, what you have, I call it in Dutch, behoud van de wet van ellende. I think that when the chemical is going bio-based, it is very important for this region. If 50% of the shampoos is produced here in the northern part of Limburg, and roadside grasses is over the whole Netherlands. I think it is a big opportunity. For the CO2 have a lot of impact. Important will be if the yield, how many lignin you can transform to crude lignin oil. I think that is the most difficult. And when that is okay, I see a good opportunity. More with Lignin is a project with starting with 6 parties, 6 companies. We have all our own expertise, and it's in a short time we must improve that it is possible to get from biomass to a chemical feedstock.
It's very important that all the things that are done in the first part of the chain is also according to our needs. So at the end, we have a relationship with R&D partners, also with raw material suppliers, and to develop the best product. So this is really important to have all these connections within the project.
I'm excited that we can make from parts of biomass such a product.
If you can provide a business to create jobs and to launch the economy using what the Mother Earth is giving you, it makes you feel really good.
We drive collaboration so that knowledge has impact. Our public-private partnerships realize improved health through implants and regenerative medicine, smart materials based on renewable feedstocks in a circular economy. Ultimately, a world where chronic diseases are curable, organ replacement routine, energy production is carbon neutral, and chemistry is clean.
It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to work with all these parties about matters that we care for that can improve the sight and the lives of our patients.
It gives a lot of energy to be working on something that really can make a lasting change in the world.
In our Accelerator Matrix, bright ideas rapidly become innovations with impact. Joint investments save costs, and researchers form unconventional teams that cut across disciplines, sectors, and conventions. Today's ideas become tomorrow's solutions. We're a unique and growing community where academia and industry meet in an open innovation setting with ultra-modern biomedical and pilot plant facilities. Research teams receive tailored support, and unlikely matches are a huge success.
We've developed a product from scratch to putting it in a human's eye in 3 years. That's extraordinarily quick.
By being able to use the facilities that we use now, we can go to the market very fast, which is unseen before.
Chemelot InSciTe is an ecosystem where everybody learns, startups flourish, and ideas don't get lost in the regulatory maze. We take proven concepts and help turn these into market-ready innovations. Experimentation, expertise, training, and entrepreneurship are the keys to our success.
Really accelerate this translation. So that means that more innovations come faster to the market to benefit man and society.
Welcome to Chemelot InSciTe.
Welcome back. Next, we will discuss the impact of what we do on people and society. And we have some new guests at the table. We have Ludo Diels, who is working at Vito, but also a professor in chemistry and biotechnology at the University of Antwerp. And he is a special chair of the advisory committee to the European Commission on SPIRE. And we will talk about that in a minute. And Koen Jansen, the Vice President, Innovation and Sustainability at DSM Biomedical. Welcome everybody. We're going to talk about sustainability. I would like to first remind you that it is possible to ask questions via the chat box, and we really appreciate your input. Dear Koen, talking about the sustainable medical sector, you are known for your passion for innovation and are responsible for innovation, R&D and sustainability at DSM Biomedical. You're also a board member at Chemelot InSciTe. So what do you think about sustainability in relation to medical applications?
Yeah, if you're looking at the medical industry, we have a great purpose. We are healing patients every day. Yet what we need to realize is that we have a big footprint as a medical industry. So we need to, let's say, collectively put our efforts together to improve the footprint. And we can do that in 3 manners. First of all, we improve our own footprint of our, let's say, plants, operations. Secondly, we enable our customers through more sustainable products. Can be biobased, can be, let's say, longer life materials or regenerative medicines. And thirdly, we need to take up the responsibility together, I think, to do the advocacy and ensure that our voice is heard, and we are going to do something about it.
So what are typical, let's say, waste volumes that you talk about?
Now, if I remember a couple of studies, if you only look at the US, for instance, every day 14 kilotons is being wasted. Yeah. And of those 14 kilotons, 20 to 25% could be recycled because it's all about plastics. Of the whole healthcare, let's say, waste, about 85% is ending up, let's say, could be separated, so it's recyclable, but it ends up in an incinerator or a landfill.
Or landfill.
And globally, if you're looking, let's say, at the emissions of the medical industry, it's about 4.4%. So if you compare it with other industries, I think we have a responsibility to take up.
Yeah, the total volume may not be as large as food packaging, but in the end, the amount of waste you generate per treated patient is, of course, stunning. And I'm very glad that that happens nowadays. Do you also see an impact of Corona right now? In Corona, there's more food packaging happening. And also non-sustainable food packaging is used there. What is happening in the medical area?
Yeah, if you're looking in the medical industry, you see, first of all, that elective surgeries, so the non-urgent surgeries, are being, let's say, postponed. So the hospitals are full with, let's say, COVID patients who have the urgent care. So currently we see in the medical industry that procedures are delayed, has an impact, of course, also in the medical industry. But it gives also other opportunities to step in. So we get also new requests, for instance, to produce swabs for, let's say, the testing. Also, we are producing face masks, for instance, but we're also doing something with our PRP system, so a platelet-rich plasma system, which also can be used to do something with the plasma of the COVID patients and give it back to the ones who need it.
So how does this work in practice? Because as DSM Biomedical, you're making materials, but you're not making the ultimate end application that the surgeon is using. So you're more at the design stage, and how do you design a material to be functional in the medical space? So how do you influence that behavior basically down the value chain? I can imagine that in practice that's not so easy to do.
No, it's challenging, but as said, we need to take up that responsibility. So what we're doing, first of all, we are designing our products and our processes with sustainability in mind. And when we talk to large medical device companies, we bring that message also to them to ensure that our voice is heard. And you see more and more in the medical industry that trend is picking up. Of course, first of all, with the classical things like your operations emissions, but we also need to see how the treatment itself is more sustainable. Small example, we're working together with Aerie Pharmaceuticals. It is for age-related macular degeneration, so you get blind in the end. But if you, currently your treatment is once a month, you go with a needle through your eye, and an eye is like you peeling an onion. So you go layer by layer through your eye to the back of the eye, so you can already feel it when I'm saying it. And each month you need to go to the hospital to get that treatment. Now we have developed drug delivery systems where you only need that treatment once a month, and you get a small injection in the eye. It degrades over time, and you just get the right medicine at the right time.
So if you talk about the people element of sustainability, there's a lot to be gained if we do it that way.
Indeed.
Okay. Thank you, Koen. I would like to switch to Ludo. In addition to your work at the University of Antwerp, you're also the chairman of the advisory committee to the European Commission on SPIRE, an organization where the process industry works together at the European level towards a more sustainable future. So how does that take shape, and why do you do this at the European level, and where do we go? We have the European Green Deal, I think, very exciting new things happening in Brussels. So how can we respond to that and surf that wave, so to speak?
Well, I think it started about 7 years ago. SPIRE was founded 7 years ago by the 8 largest process industry sectors in Europe, together with the European Commission as a public-private partnership, to set up a sustainable processing industry in Europe. Meaning that we were looking to do sustainable energy and to sustainable resources. At that time, it all started and it was not clear at all where we should land, etc. Now it's very clear. We have, in the meantime, 10 sectors, and we have a new name, Processes for Planet, which is very clear, I think, with a very strong ambition. The ambition is to be fully climate neutral by 2050 and fully circular by 2050, and to do that in a competitive way. And I think Nowadays, with Corona, we speak a lot about base support of the public, etc. It's always, even with Corona, we see it sometimes difficult. I think that here the industry, together maybe also with some support of Europe, is setting this base support and say, okay, we go for it. And in that way, we will really put a kind of standard to see the future and to only make investments in a positive way. This is completely linked also to what you are saying, to the Green Deal. The Green Deal was published just before the lockdowns, but nowadays we have also the Recovery Fund, etc., where we are seeing that the Recovery Fund will fund all those industries that look to the future and not back in history. That's really the point where we want to go. And I believe that this will strongly help the public opinion also to have a base support for this, because we will move on, we will see it in a positive way, not in a doom scenario. We will see it in a positive way, that in that way Europe will continue to be competitive in the world and will be the example for sustainability.
Yeah. So do you feel that Europe has a unique role to play? We all see things happening in the US. There used to be a lot more traction. I'm trying to be non-political. In Asia, things are emerging, but let's say far away from the status where we are in Europe. Is Europe going to lead the way in this transition?
Frankly, I hope that we will not be unique, because we are not responsible enough for the emissions in the world, if you look to the rest. But of course, we have the first position here. We are pioneers, and we speak about InSciTe, where also we have a lot of pioneers working in a lot of different areas, etc. And I think by playing the role of pioneers, you will help the other ones to do it in the same way. We see indeed that the United States are moving quite a lot. It will depend a lot on certain conditions, but China is following for sure. And if they follow, we know that they can do it very fast, much faster than we can do. So in that way, we will be the example for the world. And I would like to say that in our partnership, one of the 10 sectors is the engineering sector. So this is the sector that is constructing our factories, adapting our factories to a sustainable production. And if they are the first, they will play a role worldwide to adapt the factories everywhere in the world.
There is quite a bit of emphasis in Europe on the energy transition.
Yeah.
And I must say that I see not enough emphasis on the raw materials transition that we have for if we want to have a circular economy and use recycling much more than we do today, and also use bio-based feedstocks. There should also be focus on that raw materials transition. Is that an element that you will bring across to the European Commission? If not, then maybe
every day I try to bring elements across to the Commission, I must say. But let me first say a few words about the energy. Indeed, we see that a lot is moving in energy, but a lot will need to move in energy. Yeah. So we speak now about electrification, and InSciTe is a nice example because you have this strategy on the electric cracker, which is part of the strategy in Processors for Planet, by the way. We will need a lot of green energy, and that's still very much lagging behind. So that's really an issue that we discuss every day with the Commission.
Yeah.
But now answering on your question about the materials, I think we spoke too long about recycling. And when you look then to the definition of recycling, it's something that you throw a little bit separate away, that is sorted and then is ending up somewhere with maybe a kind of a low application. That's recycling up to now. What we want to do is really to change our primary resources into secondary resources, but that have the same quality. It's not the idea, and that's also part of the strategy here in InSciTe, that we transform plastics into some stupid materials that we only use for certain applications. We want to transform plastics into the best plastics that we can use in the future and for other applications than we have done in the past, etc.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the performance has to become leading.
That's the point.
It's not that recycled products should be inferior or perceived as inferior. Thank you, Ludo. Next, we will discuss how we can help companies to become more sustainable.
Okay, on to the next one.
Go ahead.
Sustainability is in our hands, and the transformation towards a sustainable chemical industry is in full swing. more and more people want to understand and analyze the impact of products and processes on the environment. And for this purpose, the Life Cycle Assessment course is designed, which is now an online course for a growing, worldwide bio-based community.
After the course, participants know the difference between an excellent study and a study with a lot of flaws in it.
Carbon footprint is an LCA study that only reports greenhouse gas emissions. The carbon footprint is calculated by rigorously examining each step in the life cycle. It can be calculated with different scopes. Scope 1. A company's own greenhouse gas emissions to produce a product. Scope 2. Emissions resulting from purchased or acquired energy, electricity, steam, heat and cooling. Scope 3. Emissions along the entire value chain, including upstream, downstream and greenhouse gas emissions originating from the product's end of life. So after this course, participants will know how to calculate the carbon footprint of a product or an entire production system.
What I like so much about this course is that we can reach people who are not experienced in life cycle assessment, but would like to use it in their daily work. And most of these people work on new innovations with the promise that it will be more sustainable. And I'm very enthusiastic that they will use the tools to figure out if it is more sustainable than the current solutions, and if not, how they could improve it.
So this course is open basically to scientists, to the people that they work in industry, to the students, and basically anyone interested in the environment, in the sustainability.
We have lectures on specific topics, so we explain the different steps of life cycle assessment. We also have guest lecturers from other universities who are an expert in one of those topics.
From Maastricht University, as well as prestigious universities in the world like MIT in the US or Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. So we had international faculty and academia from top universities that contributed to this course.
And then, based on all the information that the participants get in these modules, they are able to go through the different steps of LCA themselves.
The course was structured in a way to have both the theoretical knowledge as well as the applications and how to actually perform an LCA study for different applications.
Well, InSciTe came up with the idea to have this educational program next to the research program. So in the beginning I thought how we can make good links between the two. And I think our course is a good example how you can link education of professionals, so not only students that we usually have in our program, how you can learn them life cycle assessment in an easy to access way, and that's why we used online training so that also people who are in a company or are not on site can join the training. And for us it was also a nice experiment in designing online training. Now we benefit a lot from it, that we have put a lot of effort in it the past years, because now we have more and more programs that we offer online.
And we appreciate the support. We had permanent support from InSciTe. The key for us was the cooperation in all the steps, from the very initial steps of how to design the course till the last step of how the certification and this. I believe that was the key, to have this cooperation in all the steps. Climate change is a global problem and it requires a global response and global approach. So we are very happy to see that there is a growing community from all over the world interested in sustainability.
A lot of them come from different expertises, but also from different parts of the world. So we are really proud that we can offer a course to such a diverse audience and such an international audience.
And we have already received lots of interested applicants for the next year, which is heartwarming.
So I think there is a growing demand for this type of course where people get the basics of LCA. Yeah, well, we are of course training the next generation, but currently there are such big societal challenges, for instance climate change, that we need all the expertise we have to accelerate, to come up with solutions for our current problems.
We work as a bridge. As a bridge, we bring all these sectors together and all these people.
And together we see in the case studies, for instance, in the modules, that we learn from each other because we share our own experiences and what we have learned in the course, and that is for the benefit of all.
Let's talk a bit more about sustainable products. Yvonne, you're holding the chair Sustainability of Chemicals and Materials at the Faculty of Science and Engineering at the University of Maastricht. Yep. And one of the key items is the LCA, Life Cycle Assessment.
Yep.
Can you say a little bit more about that? And moreover, when do you think sustainable products will become the standard?
Well, first of all, life cycle assessment is a method to assess the environmental impact and a bit the health impact of a product. So you can say something about the environmental performance. For instance, will it combat climate change? Do you have a product that is better for less CO2 emissions compared to another product? Mm-hmm. I think sustainability is not the standard yet, but I see more and more interest for it. So we have more and more students who come into our program and say, I'm interested in materials, but I also want to make them more sustainable. So you see that goes more hand in hand. On the other hand, I also see like general public, when I do public lectures, who are very confused about what is actually a sustainable material. Is it something that can be recycled? Is it a bioplastic? You see a lot of confusing messages also about materials.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you go to the typical supermarket, how do you recognize whether something is, let's say, compostable, biodegradable, bio-based or petrochemical? That is not really clearly indicated.
Well, and if it's indicated, I doubt if it's clear enough for consumers. So we do that with students. We look into all these logos, what they mean, and we spend 3 lessons on it. So I think that's not suitable for a consumer who is in the supermarket and just wants to pick the most sustainable product. Yeah. So I think we should improve there.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about performance and also upon recycling and performance of the materials that you get. Also for sustainable products and bio-based products, they in the past had a little bit of a, let's say, prejudice that the performance was not as good. The other element that plays a role is price, of course. So if we want to have that penetration of more sustainable materials, how do you see that happening? Performance is maybe something we can solve, but price is also an element. How do you see that that is going to be influencing the whole debate?
Well, what I've seen in practice is that it's difficult to come up with bio-based alternatives that can compete on price. So most projects we have also have an added value in terms of functionality or bring something extra that you cannot bring with the fossil-based material. Mm-hmm. I think companies are also after more sustainable materials, but as long as it will not, people will not pay more for it, it's very difficult to break that rule. Yeah, but maybe if you have your life cycle assessment and you can demonstrate that these products have a lower CO2 output than the petrochemical ones, and if CO2 becomes significantly priced, which is different than today, there may be an influence also on the pricing that customers perceive. Although, of course, the packaging cost in the typical supermarket is only a fraction of the total cost of something that you buy. Yes, but maybe I can add something to it, because we also do calculations for companies with different like CO2 scenarios to see when their product would become profitable. And sometimes that can be very soon, and that depends a lot also on policies. How much do we want to shift to a more sustainable economy?
Yeah, regulatory clearly has an input here. And Ludo, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, I think if you speak about supermarkets, so let's speak about the brand owners, and the brand owners are directed by us, the consumers. Mm-hmm. And we see now more and more pledges by those brand owners that they go for more sustainable products. It must be biodegradable, bio-based, recyclable or whatever. And so this is certainly a strong force that we have as consumers, and I think we don't need the full support base for that 20% is already enough to move them in that direction.
Yeah.
And then there is no way out. And then price will go down if we prepare products that are only consumed or bought by 10 or 20%, it's expensive. But if we move away to 80%, etc., then the price will not be more than the fossil based, and then it's completely changing.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. I think we have a question from the audience, Ingrid. Is that correct?
That's correct, Marcel. We have a caller. Hello, Frank.
My name is Frank Schaap. I'm Director of Business Development for Chemelot. According to our vision, we want to become the most sustainable, competitive and safe chemical site in Europe. We have a plan to realize that, and the plan is focusing basically on 3 items. Most important is that we replace the fossil feedstock we use now, being naphtha and natural gas, by renewable feedstocks, being waste streams and bio-based streams. By doing that, since all factories at Chemelot are connected, we make the whole value chain renewable and climate neutral. The second item we focus on is electrification of our processes. And in that case, we assume that all electricity we use in the future will be green electricity. And the third item is new value chains, a cluster of new materials which are per definition sustainable by nature.
Okay, Frank, and what's your question?
I have a question for Yvonne or Emile. This is about the new materials of the future. As you know, we focus at Chemelot on replacing the fossil feedstock, but the holy grail is to develop completely new materials which are bio-based and biodegradable. In that way, we avoid the problem of microplastics in the future. My question to you is, when do you expect a new initiative from Chemelot InSciTe is coming out and is in a phase that we can start preparing industrial production of such a material at Chemelot?
Thank you. Marcel, would you?
Yeah, the question was to Yvonne and Emile. So I'm also dying to hear your answer here.
Yes, if I understand correctly, the question from Frank was about new materials, plastic materials, I assume, that are bio-based and biodegradable. And I think this indeed is the holy grail, so I'm not sure whether I have a comforting answer for him. But I think that at this moment in time we are focusing on let's say the well-known plastics. I think that's the easiest at this stage to address and make sure that they are either bio-based or recyclable. And there is plenty of opportunity and plenty of value to start with that. And I'm a bit hesitant to promise a new material with all the properties that Frank is asking from us, because I have quite a lot of history in chemical industry and I have seen very few new materials that have been successful in the market. So I would focus on existing and making them greener and more sustainable.
Yvonne, do you have any?
Yeah, and if I may add, maybe not in Chemelot InSciTe, but also in other projects, we are also focusing on biodegradability of materials. It's of course an interesting characteristic. I not fully agree with Frank Schaap that it would solve all the plastic problems of waste, because then it must be biodegradable in any environment, and then I wonder how much functionality we have left. So of course we are looking into biodegradability for certain applications, where you think it has an advantage to put it, for instance, in composting waste streams. But we are not per se only focusing on having it bio-based as well as biodegradable.
Yeah, Ludo, you want to comment?
I will fully support what Johan is saying, because indeed, in a lot of cases, it's very important that it is biodegradable. If it ends up per accident somewhere in the river or in the ocean, it's nice that it is biodegradable. But at the other end, we need to keep our carbon, and we must make it recyclable so that we can turn on the carbon in the system, and we can keep the carbon as a kind of carbon sink if it is bio-based. In that way, we take away the carbon from the atmosphere, and we don't circulate it just, we even make negative emissions. So that's, I think, an extremely important point. By the way, composting is just a slow burning. We make just CO2. But of course, in cases where we, I say per accident, throw it away, it makes sense. But it may not be the only way to approach. We have to recycle as much as possible of our plastics, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, talking about bio-based and biodegradable, I could make a commercial for my own company, but I will not.
After the break.
So, science and product development, is that a good combination? More about that later, but now, first, some examples.
They were both elected to become young European talent in the fields of science. Now they are working together in InSciTe's pilot plant, paving the way for alternative feedstocks in the chemical industry. They are designing and piloting a new technology to produce crude lignin oil. Let's meet Danny van Os and Panos Kouris.
People can call me an idealist, I don't care. We're just here to change the world, and I'm quite sure we can do it. We use a lot of fossil oil, and the biggest problem that we have with fossil oil is that we emit CO2. And the more CO2 we emit, the more the climate change will occur, and the more problems we will have.
Lignin is the part of biomass that actually is not utilized today. For actually hundreds of years, lignin is ending up as a waste product from paper and pulp industries, who actually are utilizing mainly cellulose to make paper. Lignin has three major problems. First of all, lignin is not a commodity product. If you want to build up a business case on that, you need a certain price, certain quality. Lignin doesn't offer that. The second problem is the heterogeneity of lignin. It changes based on location, on wood source. And the third problem is the processability of that feedstock. Lignin is a polymer, and if you want to bring it to all these applications from fuels, chemicals and materials, you have to make it more processable for the chemical industry. Because of these challenges, lignin is currently treated as a waste product. Almost 98% of the produced lignin today is being burned, and this actually has to change. So we propose a technology to utilize lignin, valorize it, and bring it to the market. Our technology is targeting to valorize biomass in a more holistic way. We are targeting not only cellulose and hemicellulose that the current actual industry is doing, but also we want to extract and valorize lignin as well through our process.
Lignin is a solid material, and we convert this lignin then to a liquid, what we call then crude lignin oil. It's not only about research here, it's also about commercialization of this research. And I think that's a unique factor. When you look at the markets for crude lignin oil, there are three markets that we want to approach. Fuel market, and for example, really the market that we want to target there are the marine fuels. We have the materials, and you can think then about bioplastics, and we have chemicals, so really commodity chemicals that we use on a daily basis.
We started with a project called Lignin Riches. So this project was focusing mainly on lignin as a waste stream from paper and pulp industries and cellulosic ethanol plants. So we developed our core technology based on that feedstock. But this actually gave us a chance to continue further, because we wanted to decouple ourselves from technical lignins and biorefinery lignins because of the uncertainty of price and quality. And then we want to start it from woody biomass. And then we developed a sister process within the project Liberate, also from Chemelot InSciTe. And these two projects are getting married together on the application side on a third project called Loaded, where actually we investigate how this platform product we produce can be used in materials applications specifically.
So we're here at the Brightlands Chemelot campus in their pilot plant facility. And within this building, there's the pilot plant that converts the lignin or the woody biomass to the crude lignin oil.
The lignin projects we were working on since 2015 were initiated by TU Eindhoven, University of Maastricht, DSM and Brightlands. Chemelot InSciTe is actually bringing all these parties together.
Well, here there's a whole crew that already has knowledge with pilot plants, has knowledge about how to perform these pilot plant experiments.
We start with lignin-rich material. It can be woody biomass or lignin. We use polar organic solvents as a solvent medium. We feed them in the reactor. We heat up the reactor to moderate temperatures of maximum 200 degrees. We have low reaction times, up to 30 minutes. And then during this reaction time, lignin is being fractionated and solubilized in the solvent. The desired compounds are being formed. And at the end, we have a post-processing step, so filtration and, if necessary, a solvent recycle to satisfy different applications.
This year or later this year, we already go to a demo scale. So within now and 5 years, we should have our first commercial plant, probably in the Netherlands. Then instead of producing liters or tons, we want to produce kilotons. Normally, if we would have built our own pilot plant, we would have started from scratch. So we wouldn't have any knowledge. So imagine that we had to do all the work ourselves, maybe cost us like 2 or 3 years. And now, because Chemelot InSciTe and partners helped us, we can do it in less than a year. When you look at all the regulations that's also going on, the rules for 230 and the rules for 250, they have to change.
Welcome back, everybody. So we have some new guests at the table. Welcome Patricia Dankers, Professor of Biomedical Materials at Eindhoven University of Technology. And we have Rianne Grant, postdoc at the Merlin Institute of Technology-Inspired Regenerative Medicine. We're going to talk about streamlining the innovation process in general and at Chemelot InSciTe in particular. I would like to kick it off with you, Patricia. You increasingly see that science and product development go hand in hand. And your passion lies more with the fundamentals of our science in addition to the application. So how do you feel about that balance?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Indeed, I love fundamental science, but I also love to bring a product to the market. And you can say that doesn't go together, because fundamental science is really dig into a problem, while bringing a product to the market, you have to do other things. And my advice would be to choose one. I mean, in one person, so a researcher should choose for a certain period of time to really do fundamental science, but the other researcher in the same research group could focus on the application. And then together you can bring a real invention, I believe, to the market.
Mm-hmm. And are we doing enough in the Netherlands or in Europe in general to stimulate both sides of the coin?
No, I think we do enough, but I believe we also need to invest more in fundamental science. We are not for that here today, but I think that's one point I want to make today. But also, I believe that also to bring real science into products, we also need to do something else. We need to go to higher TRL levels, and that's an example what is really done in InSciTe. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the strength of this institute.
So how do you then see the balance between, let's say, if you have the fundamentals of that let's say, new invention, how do you see that push from the science in balance with the pull from the market? How do we bring these two together?
Yeah.
That's quite a challenge.
Yeah, that's really a challenge. And I also think that sometimes it's not in balance. So I think sometimes you should leave the researcher with his or her fundamental problem and work on that. But also, I believe that also, you need to invest in this product. So you have to choose. So that's always my advice. Choose what you do for a certain period of time. And then, you can, of course, switch after that period of time. But I don't think you should mix up fundamental science and product development in once. I think that doesn't go.
And you do see also different species in the innovation ecosystem.
Yeah.
Some really feel very comfortable with the application side, whereas others are really, they want to go deep. Emil, you wanted to say something?
Can comment on that? I think we fully agree on how you said it. And we see also that happening in practice. When a project of InSciTe start, of course, we get a new group of fresh researchers at the start. And we see some people that really get taken by focusing on the real application and bringing that forward, or even building a business out of that. And we see people indeed that are much more comfortable in digging deeper into the fundamental issues. And I think more fundamental research and application development, they should go hand in hand, because if fundamental research is not performed at a sufficient level, size and volume, then let's say we get short of initiatives that we can develop further. So they should always go hand in hand as a system, but also in persons.
Yeah,
but I think what I said, it's important to not mix it up, because I'm afraid that you then end up with nothing. So you don't have a very, very good fundamental science, but you also don't have a product. So then you're in between, and so therefore I would say you have to choose what to do for
mediocre doesn't give you a lot of money. And not a lot of satisfaction either. So
no, that's true. Indeed.
And not a publication that you want.
And not a product. So,
well, there we go. So talking about publications, Rhiannon, you work at InSciTe, a project within InSciTe. And PhD students obviously have to publish. So this is often not so easy with a commercial product that you're developing. So how do you see that? Are you running into these kinds of issues?
I think it's obviously important that PhDs and postdocs publish. I think I agree with what Patricia says, where it has to be a balance between the two, but also I think they have to be kept separate. And I think that decision has to be made at the beginning of projects by people above PhDs and postdocs, because we are governed by where our funding comes from, and we can't go against that. So if you tell us to generate patents, we will drive our research in the direction of patents. If you tell us to generate publications and do fundamental research, we'll do that. We're capable of both, but we can't do them concurrently. And I think the problem that people run into is where researchers at my level feel that we're just not sure where to put our final results. So I think if decisions were made early and clearly at the beginning of projects, it would completely solve the problem.
Okay. But in essence, I mean, you would be allowed to publish, but have to wait until a patent is filed? Or are there some inventions that you cannot even publish at all?
It depends on the project. It depends on the research. And it depends on the PI and the people in charge. Sometimes good research does get trapped waiting for patents, waiting for people who have more experience, so IP lawyers and such like, deciding whether or not this is patentable. And in that time, you can lose your novelty for publication. Whereas if a decision was made at the beginning and you knew you were driving for that process might happen faster and you'd completely avoid that issue. But to researchers, that outcome is, I don't want to say equal because they are different things, but we're equally happy with patents or publications from my perspective.
In the end, if you realize an application and have played a significant role in that, for instance, in improving patients' lives, right? That is, in addition to having a publication, that's also a very nice result to be proud of. Right?
Yeah, but also, let's not dismiss fundamental science, where having contributed to your field and your colleagues and enabled further research is equally important to helping patients in the ward.
Maybe I can add. I think it's also important to what you say to discuss that in advance, because you do different experiments for a publication versus a patent application or a product. So I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Emile, I'm curious to know how you see this. Also in the light of the future of Chemelot InSciTe, you're building up an IP estate, you could say. Yeah? There's value that is generated in these projects. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I think that on the earlier discussion we just had, I see that also things at universities are changing. Earlier on, I think that the emphasis on your let's say your performance track record at university was the number of publications and the journals that you were publishing in. I see a shift now that also generating IP that is valuable is also going to be a measure of success for you as a researcher. So things are changing there. Well, when it comes to IP versus publication in InSciTe. We know sometimes the dilemma that exists there, and we don't want to withhold publications for too long a time, but still we want to see what value might be in the technology that is being developed. So what we do typically is that a publication, when it is drafted, it is for review given to a selected number of people within the project, known people, so they know that they are there for that reason, and the author knows that they can go there. And they evaluate whether there's anything in there that could destroy commercial or patentable value. And that is then being checked. We have so far never seen a publication that was rejected on that basis. We have seen publications where a sentence was left out, or a compound had to be named differently, or some data had to be presented differently. But usually it goes pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Later we will talk more about the future of InSciTe. But first, we have a few questions for you, and Ingrid will take you through the InSciTe quiz.
Yes, thank you, Marcel. Well, we are near the end of the show, almost. And, well, we would like to test your knowledge at home of our viewers to see how much you know about InSciTe. And we will do that by Menti again with a multiple choice quiz. So you do have a chance to get it right if you don't know exactly. First question. The first question is, how many startups has InSciTe been involved in? So how many startups has InSciTe been involved in from the very start? And with involved we mean started and settled at InSciTe. You have 3 different options, 3, 5 or 9 startups that we have been involved in since the start. Well, let's see what our viewers think and how many startups. The time's up. And, well, most of you voted for 5 startups, but, well, we're speeding up, and by the time now, there's already 9 startups we have been involved in. Next question. How many partners and universities are now connected to InSciTe? How many partners and universities are now connected to InSciTe? Let's see what you think. How many partners? Is that 23 partners, 36 partners, or 52 partners? So you can choose A, B, or C, 23, 36, or 52. So those are all the partners and universities collaborating within our research projects. And let's see what you think. The time's up now, and let's see the results. Oh, really good, 36 partners. That's very correct. Thank you. Next question now. In the 5 years of InSciTe's existence, how many people have participated in the training courses? So in the last 5 years of InSciTe's existence, how many people have participated in our training courses? Is that 250? Answer B, 500, or answer C, 840. So this involves all our courses, both the biobased and the biomedical courses, IP courses, the LCA course. So all that together is that 250, 500 or 840. Let's see what you think. 840 is the correct answer. So yeah, really good. Okay, then we have come to the last question. And I can reveal that already. How many research projects, including OP-Zuid related projects, have been carried out within InSciTe in the last 5 years? We will wait to see your options. The answers A, B, and C will be A, 9 research projects, B, 18 research projects, or C, 33 research projects. Let's see what you think. So both the biobased and the biomedical and including the OP-Zuid European co-funded research projects, how many projects did we realize? Let's see what you think. And the right answer is 18. All right, well, Marcel, at the beginning of InSciTe, you were involved. 5 years later now, did you think we would become to have these results?
No, thank you, Ingrid, for that nice quiz. I'm actually impressed. I especially how many people have been involved in training course. I mean, 840 people that really, let's say, enrich their knowledge to do this. I think it's very nice. 18 different projects, so really impressive numbers, I think. I must also say that quite a few people had the answers right. So there must be a newsletter or a website that has been consulted really well. The thing that we did not mention, did anybody win, Ingrid?
Well, we will get back to that. No,
Okay.
there's no winner yet.
Now, there is a trick that we've built in because the speed at which you give the answer was also taken into account. So we may follow up on that. So we will now discuss the future InSciTe, as I previously announced. And we will do that with Emil and Koen. So Chemelot InSciTe will be discontinued at the end of 2021. So what happens then?
I think discontinued is a bit of a harsh word.
Yeah.
But, we come to a natural end, I would say, in the sense that we have given funding to start the 18 projects and to do all kind of other things, and that money is running out by the end of next year. But as you can imagine, we are planning for the next phase. I think that both for the biobased / sustainability area, but also for building a future life sciences industry in the Netherlands, in the region, I think that the stakeholders see that as of prime importance. So we are working with them for follow-up. What we do see is that what we have now, biobased and biomedical, to put it shortly, under one roof, we see that they will probably have a different route to take. There are a lot of sustainability issues, some sustainability projects and initiatives at the Chemelot campus, like Brightside, like the new Chemelot Circular Hub. And I think that our experience in scaling up and also the infrastructure and knowing how to use that will be an asset for these initiatives. So it would be natural if they would join that. And for the biomedical, we are currently developing a value proposition with our stakeholders, which we've also discussed for instance, with the province of Limburg, which I usually describe as being of a 3-layer approach. The first layer being that we are planning to install what we call a Limburg Biomedical Innovation Board, which aims to, let's say, provide an overview of the initiatives and life sciences that exist and the important participants in that, and can jointly then prioritize and also be an advocate towards other stakeholders like local and national governments. And the second layer is the ecosystem that we have described. The players there, some of the history, but also focusing on the future and also what has been invested there in the past and what has it contributed, what has it brought us today. So that is the second layer, and the third layer then is when it comes very close to Chemelot InSciTe, is what we call a first-in-human program, where we actually want to develop technologies for a first-in-human application, which is a step further than we do now, because now we usually end up with a prototype, and if it works well, we end up in the first-in-human situation. But we're now taking it a step further, and also maybe not having a startup company at the end of a project, but a startup company at the early phase of a project, which you can then steer by a funding mechanism based on deliverables and milestones. It is a bit more result oriented than we have today. And that's a value proposition that we are building with stakeholders, and Koen is also one of the stakeholders.
And Koen, is DSM fully on board with this? I don't want to provoke any
can never
any reaction you can't give, but
I'm not allowed to give future-based statements. Yet we were, let's say, deeply involved in the discussions, and we're also active in the dialogue. And I think there are a couple of critical elements we want to see in InSciTe 2.0, or how we're going to call it. First of all, I think we believe in ecosystem innovation. I think in the area where we all are, you can almost use your bike and you find your partner in the value chain. Yeah? So I think we need to make use of that asset, not only in the Netherlands, the southern part of the Netherlands, but also close to Belgium and Germany. So ecosystem innovation is important to get speed, but also to get, let's say, a non-competitive environment that you really add on instead of that you compete. Second is indeed the focus on biomedical. I think Biobased and biomedical, they can go hand in hand, but we like to bring more focus to the program. It's also important to bring in, let's say, a way of doing research, and we would like to see more venture type of projects. Yeah, so that you say, hey, you create your own company. Would also be very nice for postdocs like Rihanna. So you said, okay, we believe in a topic. We bring together a CEO and an expert team, who can fully focus, let's say, to grow that venture. You have a stage-based approach. You have also stage-based financing. I think that would be appealing. I think, but what we miss still in the area is, let's say, a venture funds. If you're looking at preclinical trials to clinical trials, it's vary between 5 million and 150 million, depending on what you're going to do in a trial. And that's a lot of money also for, let's say, a venture. So if we have, let's say, can bring parties together, and there's a lot of money available in the Netherlands, but certainly if you go inter-regional, can we, let's say, set up a partnership around venture funds who are going to fund those ventures? And then the last element, sustainability. I cannot stress it enough. We allow that to the future generations. They live on the planet when we are gone, and I think they deserve also a bright future.
I'm very happy to hear you about the ecosystem of innovation, but also the ecosystem in our society that we need to address. And I think the culture of collaboration that you see so very much in connecting people in InSciTe is, I think, something that this region can really profit from. And I'm also glad you mentioned that stepping across the border, because there's a lot of very valuable partners also just outside the Netherlands that are still close enough to collaborate with. So that's very good. I would like to switch back to Ingrid. We have some questions from the audience.
Yes, we have a connection with one of the viewers again. Hello. I'm curious about your question.
Hi, I'm Chris Duxbury. I manage the Medace facilities. For those of you who don't know, Medace is a new biomedical co-working space located here on the Brightlands Maastricht Health Campus, where InSciTe biomedical projects, as well as other biomedical startups, can use and tap into our services.
Thanks, Chris. What's your question and who would you like to address? Okay.
InSciTe has provided support with getting you to where you are now, but what further additional support or training do you think is most important to accelerate and to get through the clinical trials and then to the market?
Okay, as if I understand correctly, Rhiannon, InSciTe provided support with getting you to where you are now. What further additional support would you need to get clinical trials to the
that's
market?
an opportunity, Rhiannon. I would say go for it.
God,
mention the list.
Right, okay, Emil, I need this, I need this, I need this. No, it's $1 million question. I mean, the answer is always longer contracts and more funding. So is researchers at my level have more time to get things. I mean, obviously it can't last forever, but realistically, like if we take, for example, the project I'm on, InSciTe, it's a 4-year project. I've been here for a year and I've got a year left. It's not that long. So maybe something like a transitional program at the end where you look at the talent and the skills that have been developed by researchers, and if they can't be, if something isn't spinning out maybe from their project, maybe they can be used in another one. Maybe they have the skills. Because I think in terms of infrastructure, particularly at Medace, I work at Medace as well, we have help with things like regulatory, QA, all that expertise is there. So maybe just because your specific project isn't quite at the point of a startup or a spin out, maybe your skills could be used in other projects in some sort of transitional phase would be useful.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Chris, would that be the answer to your question?
So, thank you very much for answering my questions, and good luck with the show.
Okay, thank you. And then from Maastricht, over to you again, Koen.
Okay, thank you. We're actually close to ending our annual meeting. Time flies when you're having fun, I can tell you. But first, some more highlights to share with you.
Groundbreaking research. That is what Mohan Mani and Stijn van Leuken motivates every day. Watch how 2 universities and the industry join their forces in a project for environmentally friendly solutions, making extra strong polymers by introducing new, unprecedented processes.
Yeah, it's cool to be already in this early stage in my career part of something that can be meaningful to society and to science.
Ultra-strong, lightweight polymers are used in vital components in modern aircraft, cars and cables, for example. These polymers can be produced by upgrading waste plastics. However, current production processes have 2 major drawbacks. They require toxic additives and substantial amounts of energy, which results in large quantities of CO2. Eco-friendly alternatives are therefore needed. InSciTe project Hyperbiopol is exploring solutions and found a nice trump card for this. Water.
There is a small temperature window in which you can use water by shaping the polyamides, which leads to a processing of polyamides below 100 degrees Celsius. So that's unique in our processing technology. Since the water is a byproduct in the reaction mixture, it can also decompose your polymer if you are not careful. Basically, you shield the material. After processing, you again remove your shielding agent to re-establish. So we call it reversible shielding approach.
It has a lot of potential. It's not a limited resource. It would allow for easier recycling, and at the same time the properties of the material improve. And a longer lifetime is of course good for the environment because you can use the material for a longer time, but also good for a customer using the material, also because the lifetime is longer.
Hydrogen bonds in these polymers influence the mechanical strength of the material produced. Hyperbiopol researchers develop theoretical models to understand how water uptake influences the formation of such bonds, and therefore the polymer's strength. This knowledge is used to design and produce new bio-based hydrophobic polyamides in carefully controlled processes in the presence of water and other sustainable additives.
We develop theoretical models in 2 ways. On one hand, we solve them analytically, and on the other hand, we use thousands of equations that can be solved by the computer. So theory guides experimentation, experimentation also guides theory, and knowing about the applications makes sure that we are all going in the right direction.
find this project also has a huge impact on the industry. It's not like you do something in the lab and you publish it, leave it. But here you can do science, you can publish it, you can earn a patent, and it will have an impact over the industry. With the same existing polyamides, you are just enhancing its properties, so it will have direct influence over the current tire making industries. Yes, it's a groundbreaking technology in terms of polyamide processing. Yeah.
And I can imagine that this specific knowledge can also be used in other projects. Something I imagine is, for instance, that you create a system where water can condense out of the air to help with the water shortage problems. Or, for instance, also this application of using it to minimize water absorption in materials to extend lifetimes of materials in general.
The results so far are highly promising, and if the candidate polymers can be successfully upscaled and valorized, this revolutionary research could drastically reduce the environmental footprint of polymer production.
Your dream is always to have your product on the market, used by people.
Dear audience, this brings us to the end of this first annual meeting, the first virtual annual meeting. I would like to thank the people that we had here in the panels for their active participation and very good discussions. And also you as an audience, that you participated well with your questions, and also the answers to our questionnaires was making the show a little bit more lively than we otherwise would have been able to do it. So really would like to thank you for that. Frankly, I still miss the party, but it was a really good alternative. What about you, Ingrid?
Yeah, I do miss the party also, but it was a good alternative. It gave us an opportunity to show you a little bit more about behind the scenes of what we do, well, of course, we would like to have a live event again next year, which we will hopefully welcome you all. But also, thank you very much for watching. Thank you to all our guests and all the participants in the video, the team of Makers and Veenstra who made this all possible, and the team of Chemelot InSciTe, of course. So thank you all, and take care. See you next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm convinced that you will have a very interesting and enjoyable afternoon in this InSciTe meeting.
Thank you very much for joining this very special edition of our annual meeting, and hope to see you next year. Stay safe.
I'm very proud to work in this inspiring environment, to support the innovating projects of Chemelot InSciTe, and to be part of this fantastic team that has organized this online annual meeting. Stay safe.
We must stop exploiting fossil resources. Use energy from the sun instead, or nature for materials. InSciTe helps entrepreneurs to realize their bio-based and circular dreams. So, join us.
I see and experience the groundbreaking science and creativity of the project members daily. It is this interaction of different expertises between different people that creates the magic of InSciTe. This inspires me and motivates me to do more.
Besides the hotshots that you've seen today, there's a whole army of bachelor, master, PhD students, postdocs, technicians, financial personnel that worked very hard to reach the results that you've seen today. I hereby want to thank them all.
I really enjoy to work with this motivated team. I believe that we can contribute to a better world with our bio-based and biomedical projects. We've achieved a lot with a small team in the past few years, and I'm really proud to be a part of that.